The recording station on Kepler 442b was old and smelled like rust and decay. Commander Vexara sat in the metal chair, their crystalline body catching the dim light. 2 of their 6 limbs were gone, replaced with cheap mechanical substitutes that clicked when they moved. Their natural eyes had been burned away years ago, and now artificial ones glowed a soft blue in the darkness. The young historian across from them was eager and naive. She was from a species that had joined the Galactic Consortium after the war. She didn't understand why nobody talked about the human front. She didn't understand why veterans like Vexara usually refuse these interviews. "Thank you for agreeing to speak with us, Commander," she said, her 3 mouths speaking in harmony. "The historical records about the human consortium war are surprisingly limited. We're trying to understand what really happened." Vexara's mechanical hand twitched. They reached up and touched a spot on their chest where an Earth bullet was still lodged in their carapace. The doctors had said removing it would kill them. So it stayed there, a permanent reminder of the worst 2 years of their life. "You want to know about the humans?" Vexara's voice was rough, damaged by chemical weapons that had eaten through their breathing membranes. "Child, there's a reason we don't speak of it. There's a reason the consortium sealed those records. But surely the public has a right to know. It's been 50 years, 50 years. It felt like yesterday. It felt like 1,000 years ago." Vexara could still smell the burning cities, still hear the laughter of dying humans, still see the fear in their fellow soldiers' eyes when they received deployment orders to Earth. "The public thinks they want to know," Vexara said slowly. "They think they want to understand. But some knowledge is a burden. Some truths are poison." The historian leaned forward, her recording device humming softly. "Please, Commander. Your perspective is invaluable. You were there from the beginning. You saw it all." Vexara was quiet for a long time. Outside the station, the binary stars of Kepler 442b were setting, casting strange shadows through the window. Finally, they spoke. "We thought them primitives." The words came out bitter. They had barely left their solar system, still used chemical rockets, still fought wars among themselves with projectile weapons. The consortium had been traveling the stars for 3,000 years. We had plasma cannons, energy shields, faster than light travel. We had integrated 47 species into our peaceful collective. The historian nodded, taking notes. The integration of Earth was supposed to be routine. Routine? Vexara made a sound that might have been a laugh if it wasn't so full of pain. "Yes, that's what we thought. The consortium's peacekeeping fleet arrived at Earth on what the humans called June 15th, 2157. 48 ships, 2 million personnel, technology hundreds of years beyond anything humanity had." They paused, remembering that day, the pride they had felt, standing on the bridge of the flagship as they approached the blue and green world. How beautiful Earth had looked. How fragile. The Council's message was simple. Vexara continued. "Join the consortium. Accept our guidance. Share in our knowledge and prosperity." Resistance was not just futile, it was illogical. Every species we had encountered before had seen the wisdom of integration. Why fight when you could flourish? But the humans refused? They asked for time to consider. The Council gave them 7 days. During those 7 days, we monitored their communications. We watched their leaders meet. We saw their militaries mobilize. Vexara's artificial eyes dimmed. We laughed at their preparations. What could their primitive weapons do against our shields? What could their aircraft do against our ships that could destroy continents? The historian was writing quickly now. What happened when the 7 days ended? They sent us a message. 2 words in 3,000 Earth languages. Vexara's voice dropped to a whisper. "Never submit." And then we made our first mistake. We decided to make an example of them. To show them the futility of resistance, we targeted their military bases first. Clean strikes from orbit, plasma beams that could turn steel to vapor in seconds. We disabled their satellites, their communications, their power grids. It should have been over in hours, but it wasn't. Vexara touched the bullet in their chest again. No, it wasn't. We had studied human history, but we hadn't understood it. We saw their wars and thought them savage. We saw their violence and thought them primitive. We didn't see what it really was. What was it? Practice. 10,000 years of practice. They had been killing each other since they learned to pick up rocks. They had turned war into science, into art, into religion. And when we came from the stars, when we threatened their entire species, they did something we had never seen before. The historian waited, her 3 mouths slightly open. They stopped fighting each other. In one day, every war on Earth ended. Every human conflict ceased. 7 billion humans who couldn't agree on anything suddenly agreed on one thing. They would not kneel. Vexara stood up, their mechanical limbs whirring. They walked to the window and looked out at the alien stars. We came as conquerors. We left as survivors. And we were the lucky ones. Commander, I don't understand. With such technological superiority, how could— That's the thing about humans, Vexara interrupted. They don't fight wars the way we do. We fight to win. They fight to make sure you lose, even if it means they lose too. We came to their world expecting surrender or conventional resistance. What we got was something else entirely. The old soldier turned back to face the historian. Do you know what scared me most about humans? Not their weapons. Not their tactics. Not even their willingness to die. It was their eyes. When you looked into a human's eyes during battle, you saw something that shouldn't exist in a civilized species. What did you see? Joy. They found joy in the fighting. Not all of them, but enough. Enough to make you question everything you thought you knew about intelligent life. They had a word for it, an old word from their Norse mythology. Berserker. Warriors who fought with the fury of animals, who laughed as they died, who thanked their enemies for a good death. The historian had stopped writing. Her face, what Vexara could see of it in the dim light, showed the first signs of understanding. The first signs of fear. We thought we were bringing civilization to savages, Vexara continued. But we learned something. Humans weren't savages who needed civilizing. They were something far more dangerous. They were apex predators who had learned to pretend to be civilized. And when we threatened them, when we backed them into a corner, they stopped pretending. But surely not all humans were— No, not all. But that was almost worse. You could never tell which human would run and which would blow themselves up to take you with them. You couldn't tell which child would cry and which would stab you with a kitchen knife. You couldn't tell which doctor would heal you and which would inject you with poison. They all looked the same to us. Soft, weak, fragile. But inside some of them were something else. Vexara sat back down, suddenly feeling the weight of their years. The consortium had conquered worlds with logic, with overwhelming force, with the promise of prosperity. We had never conquered a world that didn't want to be conquered, no matter the cost. We had never fought an enemy who considered their own extinction an acceptable outcome, if it meant taking us with them. The historian cleared her throat. Commander, when did you first realize that the Earth campaign wouldn't be routine? Vexara closed their artificial eyes, and for a moment they were back there, back on Earth, back in the nightmare. 3 days after the invasion began, we had taken Beijing. No, that's wrong. We had destroyed Beijing's defenses and occupied the ruins. The humans had retreated into the subway tunnels. We sent a battalion to clear them out. 800 of our best soldiers, then what happened to them? The humans collapsed the tunnels, buried them all alive, but not before broadcasting their screams to every consortium ship in orbit. 800 voices crying for help that wouldn't come. It took them 3 days to die. 3 days of screams. The room was silent except for the hum of the recording device. That was when I knew, Vexara said finally. That was when I understood that we had made a terrible mistake. We had come to conquer Earth, but Earth would conquer us, not with weapons or technology, but with the knowledge that we had awakened something that should have been left sleeping, something that had spent its entire evolution learning to survive by any means necessary. And that something was humanity? Vexara nodded slowly. We came to their world as teachers, as guides to a better future. We left as students who had learned a terrible lesson. That humans were not a species to be conquered. They were a force of nature to be survived. And we barely did. The invasion began with such confidence. Vexara remembered standing on the command deck of the Eternal Wisdom, watching Earth grow larger on the screens. The planet looked so peaceful from space. Blue oceans, white clouds, green and brown continents. It looked like hundreds of other worlds the consortium had integrated. Worlds that now prospered under their guidance. Fleet Commander Theric had been certain of victory. The old Zalathi warrior had conquered 12 worlds in his career. He knew how these things went. First you showed overwhelming force, then you offered mercy. Finally you accepted surrender. It was a dance as old as the consortium itself. Deploy the shock troops to major population centers, Theric had ordered. Beijing, New York, London, Moscow, Tokyo, Mumbai. Show them our strength. Once they see our warriors in their streets, our ships in their skies, they will understand. Vexara had led the Beijing deployment. 3,000 consortium soldiers against a city of 30 million humans. The odds seemed laughable. Their dropships had descended through Earth's atmosphere like falling stars, shields glowing as they pushed through the primitive missile attacks the humans launched. The missiles exploded harmlessly against their barriers, little pops of fire that didn't even slow them down. They landed in Tiananmen Square. Vexara could still remember the sight. Thousands of humans gathered to watch. Some ran. Some took pictures with their primitive devices. Some just stood there staring. The consortium soldiers deployed in perfect formation, plasma rifles humming with power, armor gleaming in the Earth sun. People of Earth, Vexara had announced through the translation speakers, we come in peace. Lay down your weapons. Accept the wisdom of the consortium. No harm will come to those who comply. For a moment there was silence. Then someone in the crowd laughed. A single human laughing at 3,000 alien soldiers. Others joined in. Soon hundreds were laughing. Not the laughter of joy or humor. Something else. Something that made Vexara's carapace cold. Then the shooting started. Not from the military. From windows. From rooftops. From the crowd itself. Projectile weapons primitive and loud. Bullets bouncing off their shields. It was almost pitiful. The consortium soldiers didn't even return fire at first. Why waste energy on an enemy that couldn't hurt them? But the humans didn't stop. They kept firing even as their weapons did nothing. They kept attacking even as plasma beams turned buildings to glass. They kept coming even as their bodies piled up in the streets. Sir? Vexara's lieutenant had said, confusion in his 4 eyes. They're not retreating. They know they can't penetrate our shields. Why aren't they retreating? That was when the first bomb went off. A human, just a normal-looking human in normal clothes, had walked up to a group of consortium soldiers. The shields were designed to stop fast-moving projectiles and energy weapons. They weren't designed to stop a slow-moving person. The human had smiled, actually smiled, and then exploded. The blast killed 6 soldiers instantly, not because it penetrated their shields, but because the human had gotten inside the shield barrier first. Pieces of the bomber were later found embedded in consortium armor 100 meters away. Suicide attack, someone screamed. They're using suicide attacks. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what happened next. More humans came. Not soldiers, civilians, old ones, young ones, men, women, children. All walking toward the consortium lines. All potential bombs, check them, Theric ordered from orbit. Scan them for explosives. But how do you check thousands of people? How do you scan an entire city? And even when they found bombs, the humans would detonate them early, killing themselves and anyone nearby. They turned their own bodies into weapons. The Beijing subway incident happened on day 3. Vexara had sent Battalion 7 to clear the tunnels where humans were hiding. 800 soldiers with the best equipment the consortium had. They entered through 12 different stations, planning to sweep through and flush out any resistance. The humans had been waiting. They had filled the tunnels with gas, the kind that was heavier than air and settled low. When the consortium soldiers entered, their shields protected them from projectiles but not from chemistry. The gas wasn't lethal, just flammable. Very, very flammable. When Battalion 7 was deep in the tunnels, spread throughout the system, the humans ignited it. The firestorm traveled through the tunnels like a living thing. Soldiers were cooked alive inside their armor. Those who survived the fire found that the humans had weakened the tunnel supports. As they tried to escape, the ceilings came down. Tons of concrete and earth crushing them, trapping them. But the humans weren't done. They had set up broadcasting equipment. Every scream, every cry for help, every prayer to whatever gods the soldiers believed in, was transmitted to every consortium ship, every consortium base, every consortium soldier on Earth. For 3 days, Battalion 7 died. And for 3 days, every consortium soldier heard it. Pull them back, someone had begged Theric. Order a retreat from the cities. We don't retreat from primitives. Theric had roared. But his voice shook. They all heard it shake. Moscow was worse. The humans had evacuated most of the civilians before the consortium arrived. The soldiers found a city that seemed empty, dead. They moved through it carefully, checking every building, every room. It took them hours to realize the truth. The humans hadn't evacuated everyone. They had left volunteers, thousands of them, hidden in buildings and sewers in prepared positions, and they all had one job: to make the consortium pay for every meter of ground. The Battle of Moscow lasted 3 weeks. The humans used everything: Guns, bombs, fire, chemicals. They poisoned the water. They released diseases. They used their own sewage as weapons, pumping it into buildings where consortium soldiers sheltered. And through it all, they broadcast music. Russian classical music played at volumes that could damage unprotected ears. Beautiful music playing while soldiers died in the most horrible ways humans could imagine. Lieutenant Karax had gone mad during Moscow. The young officer had been caught in a trap where humans had used something called white phosphorus. It burned through his armor. Through his carapace couldn't be put out with water. He had lived for 6 hours screaming. The humans had made sure he lived that long. They had a medical team keeping him alive, broadcasting his agony. When they finally let him die, they sent his body back with a note. "You are not welcome here." New York was where Vexara first saw them use their children. The consortium had rules about this. You didn't harm younglings. It was the most basic law of civilization. Children were to be protected always. The humans didn't follow those rules. A 10-year-old human child had walked up to a consortium checkpoint. She was crying, holding what looked like a toy. The soldiers had lowered their weapons. One had even knelt down, trying to comfort her in broken English. The explosion killed 12 soldiers and the child. After that, standing orders were to keep all humans, regardless of age, at distance. But how do you fight an enemy that uses its own offspring as weapons? How do you stay civilized when your enemy has abandoned all civilization? Tokyo taught them about human creativity. The humans there didn't have many weapons, so they made new ones. They turned industrial equipment into weapons. Construction vehicles became tanks. Kitchen chemicals became bombs. They even used their entertainment devices, hacking them to emit frequencies that disrupted consortium equipment. One group of humans had taken over a hospital. When the consortium soldiers entered, they found it full of wounded humans. The soldiers lowered their weapons. Even in war, you didn't attack hospitals. The humans had counted on that. The wounded were fighters pretending. They waited until the soldiers were inside, until they had relaxed, until they thought they were safe. Then they struck. Scalpels, surgical saws, improvised weapons, and worse, they used the medical equipment. Drugs that paralyzed, gases that caused hallucinations. Surgical tools turned into torture devices. Of the 100 soldiers who entered that hospital, 3 survived. The ones the humans allowed to live to carry the message back. Mumbai was where they learned about human endurance. The heat there was crushing. The humidity made it hard for many consortium species to breathe. Their armor became ovens. Their equipment malfunctioned. The humans thrived in it. They had adapted to it over generations. They used it like a weapon, forcing battles during the hottest parts of the day in the most humid areas. They would retreat into the slums, millions of tiny buildings pressed together where the heat was trapped and multiplied. And in those slums, every human was a potential enemy. The old woman selling food might have a bomb. The child playing in the street might be a spotter for snipers. The family inviting you in from the heat might be planning to kill you with kitchen knives. There was no front line. There was no safe area. There was just Earth, and Earth was hell. By the end of the first month, the consortium had lost more soldiers on Earth than in the previous 100 years of expansion combined. The primitive humans with their projectile weapons had killed more consortium soldiers than any enemy they had ever faced. "We need to change tactics," Vexara had told Theric. "This isn't working." "We have the technology," Theric had insisted. "We have the advantage, do we?" Vexara had asked. 6 months. That's all it took for humans to change everything. Vexara had thought their species would need decades to understand consortium technology. The Council's scientists had said it would take humans centuries to grasp the basic principles of plasma manipulation, or shield generation. They were wrong. Terribly, catastrophically wrong. The first sign came from Australia. Vexara had been assigned to lead the ground offensive there after the disasters in the major cities. Australia seemed like it should be easier. Smaller population, lots of empty space, fewer urban centers. The perfect place to establish a stronghold and show that the consortium could control territory. They landed in the desert, far from any city. The plan was simple. Build a base, expand outward, show the humans that resistance only brought suffering. For the first week, it went well. No attacks, no suicide bombers, no children with explosives. Just empty red earth and strange alien wildlife. That should have been the warning. On the 8th day, Private Nexus went missing during a patrol. His squad found him 3 hours later. What was left of him? Something had eaten him from the inside out, leaving just his armor and bones. The medical team couldn't understand it. His shield had been active. His armor was untouched, but something had gotten inside and consumed him. Then they found the spiders, tiny things no bigger than a human fingernail. They were everywhere in the desert. Millions of them. And somehow the humans had changed them, modified them, trained them. The spiders could get through the shields by moving slowly, too slowly to trigger the barrier. Once inside, they would bite. Their venom didn't kill, it paralyzed. And while the soldier lay helpless, unable to call for help, unable to move, other things would come. The Australians had weaponized their wildlife. Every creature that could kill, and Australia had many, had been turned into a weapon against the consortium. Snakes that sought out the heat signatures of alien bodies, birds that would dive at faces pecking at eyes, insects that carried diseases specifically engineered for non-human biology. But that was just the beginning. 3 weeks into the Australian campaign, they encountered the first hybrid weapons. A group of resistance fighters attacked a patrol. They had guns, which wasn't unusual, but these guns fired plasma bolts, consortium plasma bolts. The humans had taken captured weapons and merged them with their own technology. The shields that protected against human bullets and consortium plasma weren't designed for human bullets wrapped in consortium plasma. The combination punched through like nothing the soldiers had ever seen. How? Therick had demanded when he saw the footage. How did they do this so quickly? The answer came from a captured human engineer. Under interrogation, she laughed. You think we're stupid because we're young. But we're not stupid. We're adaptable. Your species spent 1,000 years perfecting that technology. We don't need to perfect it. We just need to make it work well enough to kill you. She was right. The human weapons were crude, unsafe, likely to explode in the user's hands. But they worked. And the humans didn't care if the weapons were dangerous to use. They had billions of people. They could afford to lose soldiers to their own weapons if it meant killing the enemy. The outback became a nightmare. The humans had been preparing there for months before the consortium arrived. They had built underground cities connected by tunnels that went for hundreds of kilometers. They would attack from below, erupting from the earth like demons, killing whatever they could before disappearing again. The consortium tried to flood the tunnels. The humans had drainage systems. They tried gas. The humans had masks. They tried to collapse them. The humans had built them to withstand nuclear blasts. And in those tunnels, the humans were testing things. Vexara's squad found a laboratory once. The humans had been experimenting on captured consortium soldiers, learning their biology, their weaknesses. They had developed diseases that targeted specific species. They had created chemicals that dissolved certain types of armor. They had learned which frequencies of sound caused pain to which aliens. But the worst discovery was the gravestone squads. These were humans who had volunteered to die. Not just suicide bombers, something worse. They had been modified, enhanced with stolen consortium medical technology, changed to be perfect killers who felt no pain, no fear, no hesitation. They called them berserkers after their ancient warriors. Vexara encountered a gravestone squad during the battle for Perth. 6 humans against a full consortium company. 200 soldiers against 6 humans. Should have been a slaughter, it was. But not the way it should have been. The gravestones had been modified with combat drugs that made them faster, stronger, able to ignore wounds that should have killed them instantly. One of them took 17 plasma bolts to the chest and kept fighting for 3 minutes before finally dying. Another had both legs blown off and crawled forward on his hands, still trying to kill. They had also been given something else. A chemical that made their blood acidic. When they were shot, when they bled, their blood would eat through armor, through weapons, through flesh. They turned their own deaths into weapons. The 6 gravestones killed 43 consortium soldiers before they were stopped. And when the last one died, he was smiling. Vexara could still see that smile. Blood running from his mouth, body torn apart, and he was smiling. Thank you, the human had whispered in broken Zalati. Good death. The Perth protocol was worse. When the consortium finally took the city, they found it full of children. Thousands of them armed with modified mining equipment. The adults had evacuated, leaving the children to defend the city. It was a trap within a trap within a trap. If the consortium killed the children, they were monsters. The humans were recording everything, broadcasting it to their population. See what they do to your children, they would say. See why we must resist. If the consortium didn't fight, the children would kill them. These weren't normal children anymore. They had been trained, indoctrinated, turned into weapons. A 14-year-old with a mining laser could kill just as effectively as an adult. And if the consortium tried to capture them without killing them, they would self-detonate. Each child had been given a device. If captured, they would activate it. The explosion would kill them and anyone nearby. Vexara had tried to save one. A young girl, maybe 12 Earth years old. She had been wounded, crying. Vexara had approached carefully, weapons lowered, trying to help. The girl had looked up with eyes full of tears and said, "I'm sorry." Then she had activated her device. The explosion had thrown Vexara 30 meters. It had killed 8 soldiers who were closer. It had left that piece of human metal in Vexara's chest that was still there 50 years later. But even that wasn't the worst thing about Perth. The worst thing was what they found in the command center. Plans. Detailed plans showing that everything had been prepared months in advance. The humans had known the consortium was coming. They had known they would target Australia. They had prepared all of this before the invasion even began. How did they know? Theric had asked. How could they have known? The answer was simple and terrifying. They hadn't known. They had just prepared for everything. Every possible invasion scenario. Every possible enemy. For decades, humans had been preparing for an alien invasion, not because they knew it was coming, but because they thought it might come. And if it did, they wanted to be ready. The chemical weapons were perhaps the most horrible innovation. The humans had studied the biology of every consortium species, from captured soldiers and equipment. They had designed specific toxins for each race. For the Zelathi, they created something that dissolved the crystalline structure of their carapaces. For the Morvac, a gas that caused their respiratory sacs to rupture. For the Tanari, a virus that turned their own healing abilities against them, causing tumors to grow at incredible speeds, and they used them without hesitation, without mercy, without rules. The Battle of Sydney was where Vexara lost their eyes. The humans had developed a weapon that fired concentrated light, tuned to the exact frequency that would burn through consortium optical protection. It wasn't meant to kill. It was meant to blind, to leave soldiers helpless, afraid, dependent on others. The medical teams were overwhelmed. Thousands of soldiers blinded, screaming, and through it all the humans kept attacking. They would use sound to disorient the blind soldiers, leading them into traps off cliffs into the ocean. One blind soldier had stumbled into a human position. Instead of killing him, they had fed him, treated his wounds, and sent him back with a message. We can be merciful. Can you? It was psychological warfare at its most effective. The message was clear. We choose to be monsters. We could choose not to be. But as long as you're here, we will be the worst thing you've ever imagined. By the end of the Australian campaign, Vexara's forces had lost 60% of their strength. Not just killed. Many had deserted. They had refused to fight anymore. They had seen what humans were capable of and decided that no victory was worth this. The term Terra Syndrome started being whispered in the ranks. Soldiers who had fought on Earth were different when they came back. They couldn't sleep. They were afraid of shadows. They would panic at the sound of human laughter. Some would just stare at nothing, remembering things they couldn't forget. 1 year. The war had lasted 1 year and everything had changed. Vexara stood in what remained of the forward command base in North Africa, looking at reports that made no sense. Every nation on Earth had united. Every government, every military, every resistance group. 7 billion humans working together with one goal: destroy the invaders. It had never happened before in human history. They had always fought among themselves. Different religions, different politics, different resources to fight over. But now, faced with extinction, they had become one species with one purpose. The intelligence reports were terrifying in their simplicity. Factories that had made cars now made weapons. Hospitals that had healed people now made biological weapons. Schools that had taught children now trained soldiers. Every part of human civilization had been turned toward war, and they were learning so fast. Too fast, a captured human scientist had explained it to them before she died. You evolved slowly, she had said, blood running from her mouth. You had time to be careful, to be wise. We evolved fast, we had to. Earth tried to kill us with ice ages, with predators, with diseases. We learned to adapt or die, and now you're just another thing trying to kill us. And we will adapt. We always do. The Ghost Fleet appeared in Earth orbit without warning. 400 ships. They weren't pretty. They weren't advanced. Some were held together with welding and prayers, but they were there. And they were full of humans ready to die. The first attack was against the Eternal Wisdom, Theric's flagship. 3 human ships moving at speeds that should have torn them apart, aimed directly at the consortium vessel. The point defense systems destroyed 2. The third hit. It wasn't the impact that did the damage. It was what came after. The human ship was full of nuclear weapons, but not normal ones. They had been modified with captured consortium technology. The explosion tore through the Eternal Wisdom shields like they weren't there. Theric survived, but a third of his crew didn't. And that was just the beginning. The humans had developed a new strategy. They would ram ships, but not to destroy them. To board them. Hundreds of humans in modified spacesuits carrying weapons that shouldn't exist, floating through the vacuum to reach consortium hulls. They would burn through airlocks, fight through corridors, and plant bombs in critical systems. They called them Void Walkers, humans who had trained to fight in zero gravity and vacuum, in conditions that would kill most species instantly. They didn't care about surviving the mission. They cared about completing it. Vexara was on the sublime truth when the Void Walkers hit it. Alarms screaming, pressure dropping, and then they were there, humans in black suits moving through the ship like nightmares. They had studied consortium ship designs from captured data. They knew exactly where to go, what to destroy. The fighting was hand-to-hand in corridors meant for peaceful travel. The humans had developed weapons for this specific purpose, blades that could puncture suits and armor, acids that ate through bulkheads, devices that would decompress entire sections. One human, barely out of adolescence, had fought 3 consortium marines with nothing but a piece of sharpened metal and determination. He had killed 2 before the third shot him. As he died, he had pulled a device from his suit. His last act was to destroy the ship's navigation system. The sublime truth survived, but it took weeks to repair. And during those weeks, Earth kept building more ships, more weapons, more soldiers. Then came the Mars Gambit. The consortium had detected a large human force retreating to Mars. Thousands of ships, millions of people. It looked like an evacuation. It looked like Earth was giving up, moving its population to start over on another world. Theric saw it as an opportunity. If we destroy them on Mars, we break their spirit. We show them that running won't save them. The fleet followed, half the consortium's force chasing the humans to the red planet. It should have been a simple pursuit. Mars had no defenses, no infrastructure, nothing but red dust and thin atmosphere. The humans had been preparing Mars for 6 months. Every crater had been turned into a weapon. Every valley was a trap. The humans had seeded the entire planet with mines, not normal mines. Devices that would wait until ships were in the perfect position, then launch themselves upward at incredible speeds. The first wave of attacks destroyed 12 consortium ships in 30 seconds. But that was just the beginning. The humans on Mars weren't evacuees. They were volunteers, soldiers who had come to die. They had built bunkers deep in the Martian rock powered by nuclear reactors. They had weapons that could fire from the surface to orbit, and they had turned Olympus Mons, the largest volcano in the solar system, into a fortress. The Battle of Olympus Mons lasted 2 weeks. 500 humans held that mountain against 10,000 consortium soldiers. They had dug tunnels through the volcanic rock, creating a maze of death. Every tunnel was trapped. Every room was a kill zone. Every meter forward cost lives. The humans had also done something else. They had filled the mountain with nuclear devices. If it looked like they would lose, they would detonate them all. The explosion would be visible from Earth. It would turn Olympus Mons into a memorial to human defiance. Vexara led the final assault. They had lost 3,000 soldiers taking the lower levels. The humans had fallen back step by step, making them pay for every advance. Bodies piled up in the tunnels, consortium and human alike. At the summit, they found the last 50 humans. They were out of ammunition, out of food. Most were wounded, but they were singing. An old human battle song from something called World War II. They were singing and smiling. Their leader, a woman named Colonel Sarah Chen, stood up as Vexara entered. She was missing an arm. Her face was burned, but her eyes were clear. "Congratulations," she said in perfect Zolothi. "You've taken Olympus, Mons. It only cost you 6,000 soldiers. How many mountains do you think you can afford to take?" "Surrender," Vexara had said. "This is over," Chen laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. "Over, this was just practice. Earth has been watching, learning. Every mistake you made here, they know about. Every weakness you showed, they've noted. You think you won here? You just taught us how to beat you better next time." She was right. The Mars Gambit hadn't been about winning. It had been about learning, testing consortium tactics, finding weaknesses, sending information back to Earth. But there was another trap. While half the consortium fleet was at Mars, Earth had been building. The Ghost Fleet had grown to 1,000 ships. They had developed new weapons. And they had done something impossible. They had started converting Jupiter's moons into weapons. The physicist who discovered it couldn't believe what he was seeing. The humans had somehow installed engines on Europa, Ganymede, and Io. Massive engines that could move the moons. They were turning them into kinetic weapons. Moons that could be aimed at planets, at homeworlds. "They're insane," Theric had said when he saw the reports. "They would destroy entire worlds?" "Yes," Vexara had replied. "They would. They would destroy your worlds, their world, any world. They would rather see the galaxy burn than kneel." The human broadcast had started then, not to the consortium military but to their homeworlds, to the billion civilians who had never seen war. The message was simple: we are humanity. You tried to conquer us. You failed. Leave now or we will bring the war to you. We have nothing left to lose, do you? Along with the message came videos. The battles, the deaths, the horror of what war with humanity really meant. Children with bombs, cities turned to glass, soldiers driven mad by Terra syndrome. And then, to prove they were serious, the humans fired a demonstration. They launched Io at an uninhabited system the consortium used for mining. The moon, accelerated to a fraction of light speed, hit the system's planet. The impact was visible from 3 systems away. The planet was cracked like an egg. The message was clear: leave or we will do this to your homes. The consortium fleet at Mars began to pull back. But the humans weren't done. As the ships retreated, humanity launched one more surprise. Every human on Mars, all 500,000 of them, had been infected with a virus. Not a deadly one. Not to humans. But to 70% of consortium species it was lethal. If even one human had been captured and brought aboard a ship. If even one drop of human blood had contaminated a medical bay. The virus would spread. It would reach the homeworlds. It would kill billions. The humans had turned themselves into biological weapons, and they had done it willingly. Every human on Mars had volunteered to be infected, to become a walking plague, to make sure that even in death they would kill their enemies. That was when Vexara understood the truth. Humans didn't just accept death. They weaponized it. They turned their own mortality into a tool of war. They made their deaths more dangerous than their lives. A human philosopher had once said, "I will face my fear. I will permit it to pass over me and through me. And when it has gone past, I will turn the inner eye to see its path. Where the fear has gone, there will be nothing. Only I will remain." Humans had faced the fear of death, and they had conquered it, not by avoiding it, but by embracing it, by making it serve them. And an enemy that does not fear death cannot be defeated. It can only be survived. 2 years. The war had lasted 2 years, and the consortium was losing. Not just the battles, but everything. Their economy was collapsing from the cost. Their people were refusing to send their children to fight. Their alliance was breaking apart as member species decided that Earth wasn't worth the price. Vexara stood in the emergency council meeting aboard what remained of the fleet. Half their ships were gone. 3/4 of their ground forces were dead or too traumatized to fight, and Earth was stronger than ever. "We have to use the planet killers," General Maxis of the Tanari said. His scales were dull, showing his exhaustion. "Destroy Earth completely. End this." "We can't," Theric replied. He looked older, broken. The proud commander who had arrived at Earth was gone. "They've made sure we can't." The hologram showed the situation. Jupiter's moons were armed and aimed, but not at military targets. At homeworlds. 17 consortium homeworlds had a moon targeted at them. The message from Earth had been simple: if Earth burns, your worlds burn with us. "It's a bluff," Maxis insisted. "They wouldn't." "They would," Vexara interrupted. "We've seen what they would do. They killed their own children to hurt us. They infected themselves with plagues. They destroyed their own cities. Why would they hesitate to destroy ours? The room fell silent. Everyone knew Vexara was right. The humans had proven they would do anything. Sacrifice anything, destroy anything to win, or if not to win, to make sure their enemies lost. The latest intelligence, Theric said, bringing up new holograms. They call it the Samson option, from one of their religious texts. A warrior who was captured and blinded pulled down a temple on himself and his enemies. Death before defeat. The images showed Earth's preparation. Every major city had nuclear weapons targeted at it. If the consortium tried to take them, the humans would destroy them. Every ocean had cobalt bombs ready to poison the water for thousands of years. Every piece of valuable technology had deadman switches. They would rather have a dead world than a conquered one, Theric continued. And they've made sure that if Earth dies, they take us with them. What about negotiation? A voice asked. It was Counselor Varix joining by transmission from the homeworld. Surely they want something. They want us gone, Vexara said. That's all. They don't want our technology. They don't want our knowledge. They don't want our alliance. They want us to leave and never come back. Unacceptable. Maxis slammed his fist on the table. We are the consortium. We have brought peace to the galaxy for 3 millennia. We don't bow to primitives. They're not primitives anymore, Vexara said quietly. Look at the latest reports. The hologram changed. Human ships, but not like before. These were sleek, advanced. In 2 years, humans had gone from chemical rockets to ships that could match consortium technology. Not by copying it, but by understanding it and improving it. Their latest fighters use a hybrid of our shield technology and something they call kinetic barriers. Our weapons are 30% less effective against them. They've developed AI systems that can predict our attack patterns with 90% accuracy. They've created biological enhancements that make their soldiers faster and stronger than ours. In 2 years? Varric sounded disbelieving. In 2 years, Vexara confirmed. Every university on Earth is now a military research center. Every scientist is working on weapons. Every engineer is building war machines. 7 billion minds all focused on one goal, beating us. And they're winning, Theric said. It was the first time anyone had said it out loud. We're losing this war. The room erupted in arguments. Some wanted to keep fighting. Some wanted to retreat. Some wanted to destroy Earth regardless of the consequences. But through it all, Vexara just sat and remembered. Remembered a conversation with a captured human general named Williams. He had been dying, shot through with plasma, but he had been calm. You want to know why you're losing? Williams had asked. It's simple. This is just another war for you. One of many. You'll go home to your families, your comfortable worlds, your long lives. But for us, this is it. This is our great filter. This is the test that determines if humanity survives or goes extinct. Every human alive knows that. From the youngest child to the oldest elder, we're not fighting a war. We're fighting for existence itself. He had coughed blood and continued. Your soldiers fight because they're ordered to. Our soldiers fight because everyone they love depends on them. Your people want victory. Our people need victory. And need is always stronger than want. Williams had died smiling, like so many humans died, smiling because they knew that even in death they were part of something greater, part of humanity's refusal to surrender. The arguments in the council chamber continued for hours. Finally, a message arrived from Earth. It was broadcast on all frequencies to every consortium ship, every base, every world. A human woman appeared on the screen, middle-aged, scarred, wearing a uniform that had seen too much combat. She was identified as General Patricia Kim, Supreme Commander of United Earth Forces. Consortium forces, she said, her voice calm and clear. This is our final offer. You have 72 hours to begin complete withdrawal from our system. All ships, all personnel, all equipment. Leave and never return. Place a quarantine zone of 50 light years around our system. Never enter it again. She paused, looking directly at the camera. If you refuse, if you stay, if you continue this war, we will end it. We will trigger the Samson option. Earth will die, but so will your 17 homeworlds. Your economy will collapse. Your consortium will fall. And the survivors will always remember that you could have walked away, but you chose extinction instead. The transmission continued. We have become death, destroyer of worlds. Not by choice, but by necessity. You made us this way. You taught us that the galaxy is dangerous, that we must be stronger, Harder, more willing to do the unthinkable. We have learned your lesson well. Kim leaned forward. We don't want to destroy you. We want to be left alone. We want to develop in peace. We want to explore the stars on our own terms. But if you force us, we will burn the galaxy to ensure our freedom. The choice is yours. The transmission ended. The council was silent. Then slowly, Councillor Varick spoke. We must vote. The vote was almost unanimous. Retreat, withdraw, survive. Only General Maxis voted to continue fighting. Cowards, he spat. We're letting them win. No, Therick said quietly. We're choosing to live. There's a difference. The evacuation took 2 weeks. Every consortium ship, every soldier, every piece of equipment was pulled back. The humans watched, weapons armed, ready to trigger their doomsday option if the consortium tried anything. As the last ship prepared to leave, Vexara received a transmission. It was from Colonel Chen, the woman from Mars. She had survived, though she now had 2 artificial arms. Commander Vexara, she said, I wanted to thank you. Thank me? Vexara was confused. For what? For teaching us what we needed to know. Before you came, humans were divided, weak, distracted. You united us. You showed us what we could become when threatened. You forced us to evolve. In a way, you did us a favor. Vexara felt cold. We made you stronger. Yes, Chen smiled. You did. And now we're going to the stars. Not as conquerors like you, but as humans. Careful, prepared, and very, very dangerous. The galaxy should know that Earth is protected, that humans will not kneel, that we are the species that looked at death and made it our weapon. The transmission ended. The last consortium ship left Earth's system. The quarantine was established. Earth was alone again, but not for long. Within 5 years, human ships were seen outside the quarantine zone. Within 10, they had colonies on a dozen worlds. Within 20, they had become a major galactic power. And they remembered. They remembered the invasion. They remembered the war. They remembered the price of freedom. Vexara looked at the young historian. She had stopped recording at some point. Her face showed horror, understanding, fear. Now you know, Vexara said. Now you understand why we don't speak of the human front. Why veterans wake up screaming. Why the word human makes hardened soldiers flinch. They're monsters, the historian whispered. No, Vexara corrected. That's the worst part. They're not monsters. They're just humans. A species that evolved on a hostile world, that learned to survive by being more dangerous than anything trying to kill them. They're not evil. They're not cruel by nature. They just have one rule that overrides all others. Survive at any cost. Vexara stood up, joints aching. The war ended 50 years ago, but it never really ended. It just paused. The humans are out there, growing stronger, spreading further. They trade with us now. They're polite, even friendly, but every human ship is armed. Every human colony is fortified. Every human child learns about the war. What are they waiting for? The historian asked. Nothing, Vexara said. They're not waiting. They're ready. Ready for the next species that tries to conquer them. Ready for the next threat. Ready for whatever the galaxy throws at them. That's what makes them terrifying. They're not planning for war. They just expect it. And they're always ready for it. The old soldier moved to the door, then turned back. You asked why we don't speak of the human front? Because some horrors are best forgotten. And because they might be listening. They're always listening. Always learning. Always preparing.